Um, okay, well, I guess good morning to you all. Let's maybe run around the room and do a little bit of a check-in, see what's happening. Randy, like how are things? How are you seeing things with the team? What have you got going on with the group?
I uh I suppose our biggest thing this week is that I created a business diary accountability tracking
Yeah,
sheet for everybody on the team this week. So everybody's tucking into that just to keep the momentum going and um, create a mindset of creating quality conversations.
awesome. Yeah. Yeah. And everybody fairly engaged. Everybody's seems like there's quite a bit of business happening. Everybody's kind of out and about, and
I think everybody is working very hard right now. Yeah, absolutely.
it's kind of that time of year. We were I was reviewing the stats, and I mentioned it yesterday on our brokerage meeting, but the activity levels are kind of more at a normal level. So we are seeing obviously a spring market type conditions and spring market activity, and well, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. With the rate hike obviously that came through last week, and arguably potentially one more coming up in July that they're talking about. So these are historically they're not ridiculous rates. They're probably the highest
Mm.
rates we've seen in 20 or so years, but it's definitely going to temper some of the market activity and probably going to have a little bit of an impact on pricing as well. So will be
Well, when I got into the real estate market as a mortgage broker back in 2009, a cheap 5 year was five and a quarter.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So, but it's it hasn't really touched that point since then. So
No.
it's adjustment. But so I'd say right now there's a group of people out there that have a rate hold for another 110 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's gonna light a fire, and they're probably not in the price range they'd hope to be, but they only see their uh, opportunities shrinking right now, and I think it's going to have a impact on the market a little bit for
Yeah.
the next
And
month
for
or so.
those that are like really just trying to get into the market, the hardest purchase is always the first one. And
Mhm.
sometimes you have to make a sacrifice and really sort of weigh and value, what's really important, and what the long-term goal is. Sometimes that means a bit of it, maybe you don't get the double garage or the big fancy ensuite or something like that, just to get your foot in the door and take advantage of the equity growth that is pretty constant as far as real estate goes in general.
Mhm.
Andy, how you doing this morning? How's your week been? You had a listing appointment last week. How did that go for you?
Um, it was pretty good. Like I felt really confident, and the conversation was very organic. I touched on all the points I needed to. Um, Seeing as it was my first time, dealing with a sell by client, I was pretty proud of myself and happy. With a lot of support and training from Ryan and the Neil Estate Group and Ron. We've been kind of touching on those sell by client experiences and the different scenarios that you would present them with, as far as creating a game plan around how to go about listing their place whilst finding them the place that they need and they want. um I think it's probably one of the trickiest things that we have to do as realtors, but I mean, obviously, like anything, the more training and the more time you spend on honing your craft, I'm sure the easier it gets and the more second nature it becomes. But Long story short was it didn't really work out, unfortunately, because of the simple fact that the place that they were considering purchasing just didn't tick all the boxes, and they're really, really picky people. So I was really surprised, to be honest, when they kind of popped their head up out of the blue and we were like, hey, we're thinking about, doing this. And they were in my nurture category in my CRM, and I just I didn't write them off, but I wasn't, actively engaging with them. And I was just sending them a market report every month, and that was enough, and some people don't want you calling them and stuff, but just enough to know that I was still there.
Yeah.
And I was a touch point for real estate in the area. So yeah, they just didn't, they were picky, and they didn't want the place bad enough. So I mean, that it's like a house of cards, right? If there's no reason for them to give up the place that they're in and they're somewhat happy with, if they can't find the one that ticks all the boxes for them. So that's that. Hopefully that one comes, though.
And you had some
Hey,
challenges.
Andy.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ryan.
Hey, real quick, if you don't mind, do you have a game plan moving forward so you can get your ducks in a row on listing their property, so that you can actually, so you're ready to go when the property that they do want to buy comes up? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So that
absolutely.
you're subject to sale, I guess, but at least you're not waiting a week or 2 weeks to get live on MLS, right? Did you guys kind of have that discussion, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's number one, as you know. So yeah, no, I while I was there, I got all the pertinent information on the upgrades that they've done, and a lot of great information to do the write-up, which I'm going to be doing. So just like you said, so when it is time, I can just say, hey, check this out. I already did this based on our last meeting. What do you think? If you'd like me to tweak it at all. I'll add it to our coming soon, within 3 days of going live to the MLS and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I did, at least it wasn't all a loss. I did my research while I was there, and I got to meet them in person, and we were really a good match. But and I told them the most important thing is that you're happy with your decision. The last thing I want to do is go through this whole process and you have regrets. So now I know exactly what they're looking for too.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the biggest issues with something like this is to get a listing doc signed, get a listing signed, get all of our collateral done, have it uploaded to MLS. That way, when they do find the property they love, all we have to do is click go and we're live, and we can do coming soon before that, but click live. And now we're live on MLS. We can, your chances of getting a subject to sale accepted on the purchase is a lot higher, right? Because you're not waiting that week and a half. So
yeah,
that's usually what I try to do, is just explain, let's get prepared so that when the right property does come up, we can be listed, so we can make a stronger offer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
so that might be something you might want to try.
Yeah, and we talked, I think, a little bit last week too, Andy, just sort of managing the expectations of your buy sell clients, their perception and their thoughts and impression of your CMA. Was that in line with sort of what they were thinking? And are they in two different mindsets when they're when they have a seller hat on and when they have a buyer hat on, kind of thing?
Yeah, no, the CMA was perfect. It was in line with what they were thinking. I asked them, first of all, before even talking about price or what I had come up with, what they felt it was worth, which was good, and it totally felt almost exactly in line with where I came out with a recent relevant sales. But I mean, the fact of it, and they totally understand, the different roles in, when it comes to being a buyer and a seller, because I mean, they're doing both.
Yeah.
And I explained, the situation around the pre-sale, and, if we have other parties that are interested in it as well, that, we're going to want to negotiate to begin with, but if other parties get involved, we're going to want to put our best foot forward. So they totally understood, and that's one of the best parts about the meeting, was the fact that I really prepped them for when they do find the perfect place for them. I don't have to go through all this again. You know, I answered a lot of questions for them, went over the rescission period, whole bunch of stuff. So yeah, it was quite good. I also found out for myself that there is an exemption to the property transfer tax for new builds when it comes to certain new builds, and I found some information that I sent to them on that, so which is good as well. So all in all, it was fruitful in some regards, but I don't think they're going to be going anywhere until they find the perfect place. And like I said, you know, they're really picky people, and they don't have any need to really you know, uproot unless they find something that's better. So
yeah. And as Ryan said, you know, the key in these types of situations is to get as much prep work done as possible, and you know, if at all possible, get the listing secured so that you're ready to go. You know, being prepared, you know, often you know, especially if you are going to have to be subject to sale or something like that, you know, having the ability to just click a button and be live and active will be very beneficial as far as, you know, any potential negotiation goes.
the hardest part with them in this situation was their motivation. They're just not that motivated. Like I said, they were in my nurture category. They just popped up out of nowhere, and I first was introduced to them like around a year ago when I first became licensed. So, you know, for them to take a whole year to say, hey, we found a place, you know, I could, you know, push them to sign the multiple listing contract now, but who's saying that they're going to be ready, you know, within the time the contract's open? Like, it could take them another year or two to find the perfect unicorn, you know, like to swoop down. So
yeah,
I mean, they know the process anyway.
For sure. Morning, Ron.
Good morning. So firstly, Andy, replace the word push with inspire, motivate, persuade, encourage. Don't push. I think identifying that they're in your nurture, so they're kind of on the back burner, and you're investing minimal effort to maintain a relationship with them. Until you can verify and validate that they're going to be serious and have a serious motivation, it's not worth investing that much time with them. That's so important. They're so picky. What they want is so specific. Unless you can get them to understand that they're probably never ever going to move if that is the case, and they're also not in a cash position, because when the perfect place that ticks all their boxes comes up and it's a really good deal and they're all excited about it, there's going to be someone walking through the door ahead of them that has cash.
They have cash. I found that out too.
So they don't need to sell first?
No, I mean, they don't have to, but they would much rather do that than take all, you know, the cash that they have isn't liquid.
That's great that you've learned that they have the
Yeah.
ability. So, you know, if they have the ability, then maybe they are worth some further investment, but ultimately they're not going anywhere until they find the place that's ticking all their boxes, which is a unicorn, which may not exist.
Yeah.
So why do they want to move?
They want a bigger yard, or a yard, period. You know, they're in a townhouse complex right now, which is on the second floor, which is interesting.
Why is the yard important to them?
They just like to putz around, you know, they have some extra space. They do have a dog. The dog's quite old, but it doesn't really care if he goes outside or not, according to them. But they just feel that they want a place for their own, that they could sit and entertain outside if they want. So it doesn't have to be
What are they
big.
going to feel if 10 years from now they're still in the same place?
They don't really care. I don't think the want isn't that big. They said, you know, they're willing to springboard up if the, you know, situation presents itself, but I just don't think they're that motivated.
Yeah. Next.
That's why, you know, they're only getting monthly emails, and that's it. You know, like, they're a part of my newsletter. And
Keep
if they're
nurturing.
yeah, if they pop up again, you never know.
Yeah.
Maybe there are rainbows and unicorns. Who knows, right?
Definitely.
There are rainbows, Andy. There are no unicorns.
Emily,
Where's my
how
pot of
are
gold?
Yeah, Emily, how are you doing? How's your listing coming along?
Good. Yeah, I have 2 subject removals tomorrow. So I've just like got constant butterflies in my stomach. Hopefully everything goes well. But yeah, for my listing, they had a inspection and all went good. And then yeah, subject to financing for both deals. So yeah.
Awesome.
Mhm.
And you had, so this is, you have 2 subject removals. So you've got a buyer client and a seller client.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So with with your seller, you know, what was the conversation like for you when you were listing the property and just sort of anticipating what the activity is going to be, what potentially they could expect? Did you have a conversation with the sellers around the expectation of potential multiple offers and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, a little bit. They were kind of just like, they wanted it to go quick. I mean, one of them really wanted it to go quick and just kind of, let's just put it up, let's do this kind of thing. So I said, okay, we'll just go, you know, it could go in multiples, but they also, the comparables were like, one said, you know, it went pending in 2 days and the other one was 58 days. And
Yeah.
they're within a block, the exact same square foot, like everything. So I did present that to them and said, you know, it's kind of hard to give you an exact number of, you know, how quickly it's going to go, but I think we could just like put it up and, you know, shoot for the stars, and it all worked out great. And then when it did come to it, there was a subject to sale and they were just like, no, right away kind of thing. They wanted it gone quick and chose the one with subject to financing instead. So.
And your buyer client that you've been working with, conditional upon financing, conditional on inspection as well, or
No,
no, just financing?
just financing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Larry, how are you doing this morning?
Good, thank you. Yeah, business wise, this week I had the subject conditions removed on my sale on Pioneer and also removed the conditions on their purchase. So
Fabulous.
2 ends of the deals guaranteed now.
Another buy and sell situation. They were linked, or?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is
And-
dragged forward though, because we did a subject to sale originally and we extended it 3 times because theirs wasn't selling. So then we stopped it and then they're sold. So now we've re-engaged. Was a multiple, but they got it cheaper than what the subject to sale was.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So that was sort of the strategy, because they sort of paid high to lock it in for the subject. So the
Yeah.
strategy was let it go. If they lose it, they lose it.
That subject to
Again.
the sale element can be a little bit challenging, you know, if you're going to put that in there, you know, to get the attention of a seller, you know, you're not going to have a lot of room to negotiate price wise or anything. So typically you're going to have to be really strong price wise, and you know, if you are competing, you know, hopefully, you know, nobody else has, you know, fewer conditions and stuff, but it does make it a little bit more difficult because sellers can sometimes be a little apprehensive.
Agreed.
Awesome. Natalia, what's going on with you this morning? How's your week been so far? Oh, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it was a lot to learn, right? But things start moving along. Today I have an appointment with a buyer, and I will have an appointment with the buyer Saturday as well. So yeah, things moving along.
Have you met with them already, or is this going to be your initial meeting before you go out and look at properties?
It will be an initial meeting, and it will be at the property.
Okay. And have you gone through the sort of steps as far as you know, your disclosure of representation and conversation about privacy and that kind of stuff as well in advance?
Well, we went through forms with Randy. Okay, I did not talk to those clients about all that what you said, not yet, because I don't think anybody willing to have this conversation on the phone. Okay, so I would like to have this conversation in person, and in person it will be today.
Fabulous. Yeah. It's a really important conversation to have. And, you know, I know we've talked about the representation and the use of, you know, the form, the disclosure form and whatnot. It really does set the table. And oftentimes, you know, if you present it, you know, in such a manner, most people will arguably suggest that they've never seen it before, even though they probably have had conversations or been out, you know, working with or viewing properties with other realtors. So it's one of those things that you can use and really just sort of highlight and amplify the value, as well as, you know, educating them on the process, the role, the obligations, and really what, you know, agency means.
That's a very great idea. Before I go to this appointment, I will definitely prepare that documents and we'll go over that with them.
Yeah. The process is really important, and making sure your process is documented. It's the best way to kind of keep you protected and keep you safe in the event that, you know, there is something wrong. You know, securing a buyer agency agreement or at least an acknowledgement would be super beneficial as well. However, often, you know, with the current, you know, knowledge, you know, in with respect to the general public, those types of agreements are often weary. People are weary of it, but we do have some good agents and good techniques and skills to work on getting them secured.
Okay. Maybe those wonderful agents can share their experience one day.
Yeah, we'll probably touch on that again coming up in the future. I mentioned yesterday that, you know, buyer agency contracts are on the table as far as a written service agreement that potentially could be required down the road as far as the provincial government and the regulator is concerned. So some of the newer realtors find it really easy to navigate through a buyer agency contract and understand it, and some that have been in the business for a long time, it's you know, a little bit more difficult to sort of shift and change your practice a little bit. But I think it's something that we should all be highly you know, aware of. Ron?
Yeah, just a couple of comments and I guess suggestions around the whole idea of the buyer agreement. Firstly, in your language with clients, don't call it a buyer agency contract. Call it a buyer representation agreement. And get it into your own mind that it's something you're offering to and doing for the client. It's not something you're asking them to do for you. You're offering your services in exchange for their commitment to work exclusively with you. It's a fair deal. If you're going to bring value to the table, spell out what it is you're offering to do for them and ask them for the commitment. 30 years ago, we did that with a handshake. 29 years ago, we started asking for people to sign an agreement, and about 1% of realtors were doing it. And now I think it's a lot higher because the old school realtors are afraid of it and it's on their head. There's no reason to be. It's no less natural than expecting a client to sign a listing agreement if you're going to offer their house for sale. It's the same situation. You're offering your services in exchange for that exclusive agreement of representation. You have to understand in your own mind and have clear in your mind what the value proposition is. What is in it for them to work with you? What are they getting? What are you going to do for them? What are you sacrificing? And in return to expect that they work with you and only you.
Thanks, Ron.
Just to say that in Quebec, I never worked without a buyer agency agreement. For 10 years, I have used that. Okay. Well, it's slightly different and our provincial law is slightly different. For us, it's a little bit easier to close on that agreement because of the circumstances of our regulation department, how they want it. But I'm sure in a month, I will be able to pick up how to do this here as well. However, like I said, 10 years, I never worked without buyer agency agreement. Never, not even one day.
Yeah, well, don't start now.
Nate, let's check in with you. How are things going for you?
Not bad. Just listing isn't going too good. I think the market, I think, got a little bit flooded there when some condos in Langford got their occupancy. I think the rates have possibly made some of the investors, instead of renting them, and subsidizing the rent, they're just offloading them when they bought the pre-sale. Seems to be so kind of market got a bit flooded. Needless to say, I sent you the cancellation yesterday.
So what was that, just more or less the when you listed and when you did a CMA on the property, you made your presentation to the seller, you're talking about market activity and timing.
Yep.
What was that conversation like? What were their expectations, and sort of what were your steps as far as trying to help navigate what they were expecting?
Tough situation, just because their family grew a little bit unexpectedly. So they were wanting to trade up, and they're right on the cusp of being able to afford the next level up, like a 3-bedroom townhouse, maybe at the 650, 675. They wanted additional parking as well. But then with the rates continuing to creep up, and taking into account the payment they've already got on a lower, because when they bought it was, they bought pre-sale. So it's at a lower price point. So there's kind of a bit of a war of attrition, but I think the plan now is to perhaps list in the fall or late August, see if they can catch something then. And we'll just see what happens with the next 2 months. In terms of prices, we listed high, and that to try to achieve what they wanted. But everything, if the prices come down across the board, they're going to come down on the top end stuff too. So we'll just kind of wait and see what happens here.
Yeah. So, and you say you listed high. So obviously that was above sort of what your CMA value came in, and what your recommendation was. Was that was just purely based on what they needed, or what they wanted? Like, was there clarity around the need or the want to list high, or?
Yeah, they wanted to get to a point where they could get to the next price level, essentially, where they'd have enough money to make it all work, because they would take a hit they'd probably pay about $800 more a month than they're paying now, to basically trade across, if they couldn't get to the next tier. So we listed a little bit high to see if we could get it, and of course the market sort of got a bit flooded there with some of those condos and Orono and Gateway, and then 2 more people in the same building listed right after us, so it kind of took the wind out of our sails. Always happens, right?
And they were the listings that came up were competitive?
Yeah, right in the same price point. Needless to say, none of them sold.
And so when the conversation about canceling the listing came up and holding off, how did that develop, and what did that conversation sound like? We're in a pretty active market, and statistically we've got some really good sales activity, and you look historically, things will temper a little bit throughout the balance of the summer. What's their what's the goal moving forward? Are they in a position, or are you maintaining a position where you can keep them or get them back active if something pops up? Because again, obviously another sort of buy sell transition, managing sort of desire and urgency, and it sounds like they might be a little more motivated than potentially Andy's clients, but the continuing conversation about being ready, where are you at with that?
Yep, chatted with them yesterday. We are ready to relist, and they are watching the market just in case. And now obviously this last interest rate hike wasn't a couple months ago. We didn't think it would happen. A lot of people didn't think it would happen. So now we're in line for perhaps another interest rate hike. So at this point in time, they're just kind of gauging the market. It's not, for things like parking, their little baby's still little, so they can still manage, and they're not out. They haven't outgrown their place yet, but they will have soon. So they do want to make the move, and everything's ready to go if they did want to put something subject to sale.
Yeah.
But there's no real benefit to them if they were to sell now at the current price. Even there's nothing really they could do to trade up at this point, because they're not going to get the money they need. So
Right.
it's kind of better just to hold off. I think it's in their best interest for a couple months.
And then try again. Hopefully, as I think, potentially, where we are, with the uptick in rate and that one that we just saw last week, you could ask a dozen economists and 5 or 6 of them would have said yes, 5 or 6 of them would have said no. Everybody was of a split opinion on it, and they're in the same boat potentially with the one coming in July. However, it really does impact, and with that impact, we could see some market activity that ultimately could end up being beneficial for them. If they've got a good product. The other side of that, and part of the other conversation, you may want to be is, how much time do you have? For sure the kid's a little smaller now, but we have a strong market and we have a very active market, and we, regardless of the number of sales, we are still seeing, some small incremental increases in value. So it's going to trade one way or another. If they want to trade up and they get a little bit more money for their property, chances are they're going to have to pay a little bit more money for the one they want, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
about the dollar value, and the percentage change might be the same down the road, but the dollar value will be a little bit different.
Yeah, and when she comes off maternity leave, that'll increase her income, which will give them a bit more buying power, and they'll have paid off a couple more things. So we're hoping that the stars align, and the timing is, timing is so key, right? So we're really hoping that it all comes together for them.
Yeah. Awesome. Who else have we got here? Ryan, anything you want to touch on? Anything you want to share this morning? If you're listening.
I think he's at an inspection this morning.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah.
All in all, there's a lot of similarities in some of the conversations that we've had this morning, and the situations and stories that you guys have shared. And talking a little bit about preparing, those buy-sell clients are going to be quite a bit. Our supply challenge, certainly something that is going to continue to probably be very tight and arguably erode a little bit. But those initial conversations when you're working with sellers and you're listing, your strategy is really important, and the different types of strategies that you can have with your clients. If you have to sell, there's a couple of ways doing it, and having that listing prepared and ready to go if they don't want to list right away is super important. And then being able to understand what that price point is, and really have a heart-to-heart conversation, and make sure you have a good document or a good record of that conversation, so it will back up the activity when it does hit the market. Sometimes we can get sellers can get a little bit excited. If a property comes up, for example, that they're really keen on, really important to have them truly understand what's going to happen when we put your house up for sale, and what does it look like if this property does come up. Do we want to be coming to market when our property comes for sale, or do we want to be active on the market? There's several different ways that can play out. And when you're listing and you have to sell in order to buy, when you've got these double clients, just going over all of the potential scenarios, and understanding too that if we take a certain path, we may end up losing it. So these other options may be more beneficial as far as having our property on the market, arguably having an offer in place on our property that is conditional potentially of us finding a place. A lot of times, supply is in high demand, and buyers can and will, if the price is right and the place is right and the property is right. Sometimes they're happy to secure a property or enter into a contract agreement that allows the seller the opportunity to purchase something different. It's very similar to buying subject to sale of. But arguably, if you've got a property with an offer in place, not necessarily a bad strategy to have it, secured with a contract, a purchase and sale that's subject to them finding something. have you had sort of those discussions as far as being able to get the listing secured and on the market? We've seen a few listings with realtor notes and realtor comments stating that they have they will be inserting a subject to purchasing. Nobody come across that experience?
Say that, what was that last part you said?
Well, having when you're working with these double clients, and there's a hesitation to put the property on the market because they don't necessarily have the right spot to go. But if something comes up, alternatively, as opposed to having everything ready to go and getting a property on the market in a couple of days after you make your offer that's subject to sale of, get the property listed. You can always protect your seller by having a condition written into any offer that they get that will be subject to your seller entering a purchase agreement elsewhere. There's a bit of a balance there and a bit of an ability to really utilize a term or a clause like that because the demand is so high. There's a lot of urgency from a lot of buyers out there to secure something, and they may be able to wait and navigate. So, I mean, it's potentially an alternative as opposed to waiting to get the property to market. And then in addition to that, if you can have that discussion and get to that point, you're going to have, an active listing, which is going to provide you with some marketing material. It's going to provide you with some lead inquiries and potential lead generation. So, in the end, you may not ultimately find them a place, but you will gain some benefit over having the property listed for sale as far as potential clients and pipeline fillers. Make sense? Listings are, it's great, and these are easy conversations to have, and they're low pressure conversations with sellers. It's like, look, you know what, let's put your property up. If we don't find the house that you're looking for, we're not gonna put you in a position where you're committed to selling. And then you get a benefit from it as far as the marketing and potential lead generation goes. Ron, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to say, Andy, don't go and list that one for those people that you've been talking about because they've been looking for a year and haven't seen anything they want yet.
Yeah. And again,
take a 10-year listing.
Yeah. It's a business decision, right? If they've got a good viable property and their expectations are reasonable, if they're not looking for, as Ron quoted, a unicorn or a needle in a haystack, there could be a really good opportunity, and the spin-off and the extra activity that you get out of having a listing on the market will always benefit you as a listing realtor anyway. Ron?
We're on the subject of the whole buy sell, people that want to buy and need to sell. Oh man, I just lost my thought. They're tricky. The reality is that I think you have some responsibility to have them understand what they're up against and the pros and cons of buying first or selling first. And I characterize it and tell them that if they want to find something first, that they're buying in reverse. And what that's doing is it's costing them money. It's reducing their chances of success dramatically. If they sell first, they've got time on their hands to speculate and try to get top dollar, get the house ready and hit the market, wait for the right time in the market. They can play the market and wait for the price that they want. If they find something they love first and now they're in a panic and a hurry to get their place on the market and get it sold, they're going to sell it quick. They're probably not going to get as much. They're going to be under a lot more pressure. It's certainly a massive problem when their needs are so specific that suitable properties don't exist or aren't coming along. And it makes it even more important that they're in a ready position when that one does come up.
Yeah, great point. And you know, from going from a listing or seller's perspective, you know, we have obviously you know, you guys are aware of the current conditions in the marketplace. You know, we talk about preparing sellers in these types of situations, but you know, when you're dealing with a buyer that's not having to sell something that is, you know, arguably got all their boxes checked and they're ready to go, you know, they've got you know, financing tentatively lined up, they've done, you know, a lot of homework and a lot of research, and they're prepared. You know, any given property, the conversations, you know, depending on the property, depending on the location, you know, you guys are aware of what this looks like, and preparing your buyers so that they're ready to act, and having those conversations about what's going to happen next before it happens is really, really important. You know, once you write that offer, you know, any term or any condition in that offer, you know, the results of anything that's to come of that shouldn't necessarily be surprising to them. You know, the more preparation, the more conversation we have in advance, you know, when we talk about working with buyers and we're talking about financing, and we're talking about pre-approval, and we're talking about making sure our ducks in a row, you know, it's important to understand, you know, that, and that buyers are aware that although they may be approved, if there is a finance condition, the property will still need to be checked by the lender. A pre-approval, you know, means that we'll lend you this much money, but we're not going to lend you this much money just on any old property. The lender is going to want to secure the interest and stuff too. So even if they love the property, if they're in a situation where they have to sort of bid up, you know, be realistic about, you know, what the reality of that could be. You know, if it doesn't satisfy, you know, the lender requirements or the financing requirements. You know, the little challenges right now, you know, around fires and insurance, and understanding that, you know, as we move into the summer, you know, we may have some significant challenges to deal with as far as, you know, completing. I sent out the wildfire clause for everybody to kind of have a look at yesterday, which definitely will be a good thing to potentially utilize moving forward, given the risk that we're in. But understanding that, you know, as we write these contracts, this is really our best case scenario. And sometimes we're going to have to, you know, to pivot. We may have to, you know, make adjustments down the road depending on certain situations. Inspections are another one. And I know we've talked about them in the past. You know, when inspection reports can be very overwhelming to somebody that isn't familiar with them or isn't prepared. So, you know, when you're looking at houses, you should be talking to your clients about inspections and about what it's going to look like and what potentially is going to come up, and really understanding, you know, that an inspection isn't necessarily a tool that allows you to navigate or adjust price or go in for a reduction or something. It's a snapshot, and it's a state of health in the current condition. There will always be issues that come up in inspection reports, and sometimes the way they're presented is really exaggerated, really overwhelming. But the reality is, you know, little things are going to come up the same for every property. And, you know, the understanding that this is a snapshot. If something major comes up, sure, there's always going to be the ability, but you shouldn't necessarily be going into an inspection thinking that you're going to use it to be able to adjust the price. It's just there so you know, or your client knows exactly what you're getting into. Ryan, we checked on you earlier. I see you're back.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good. Yeah.
Oh, right on. Yeah, I was at an inspection there, and the homeowner was home and talking my ear off, so I had you quieted down.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. The inspection, this is for your buyers or for your listing?
Buyers.
Yeah. And you know, when were the buyers present? Did the buyers have a need, or did you guys have a conversation about the buyers being present for part of the inspection?
Yeah, they'll be there for the walkthrough here at 10:30.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And do you think, knowing what comes through typically in any given inspection report, like you've had those conversations with your buyer about what they can expect when they actually get the report?
Very important. It's also a strata. So the important thing to discuss there is the fact that all stratas are underfunded. And it's by design, and it's the right thing to do so that you're not paying more into the strata than you need to. There should be small special levies coming up for the big jobs like building envelope. So 5 years down the road, there's a levy coming up. We need to save for that, as long as it's probably under $100 a month that you need to put into your own savings account to prepare for that. Then that's usually a pretty well-run strata. If it's, you're around the $200 mark, then they're a little too underfunded. But the point of that is 5 years down the road, maybe you move, maybe it's 7 years for the strata, the levy for the building envelope, and you move after 5 years. Well, you take all that money you've been saving with you rather than giving it to the strata and having nothing to show for it. So I think it's very important to foreshadow and go over what's going to happen on the inspection and give them an idea of what to expect in the report. Anytime I'm walking through a property with clients, I'm going to point out some things that I know are going to come up on the inspection as well. And, it's usually a laundry list of little things. They need caulking on seals around bathtubs and sinks and steel braided lines, and dishwasher vent or, drain has to be lubed so it doesn't back, all those little things. And they're fun to point out and gets you a few brownie points, I think, too. So, but yeah.
Well, and those conversations, so a lot of realtors are fearful of pointing stuff out or saying that kind of stuff because they don't want to take on, liability or that kind of stuff. But, those are always little things that will come up, and they're little day-to-day things that are probably going to come up on almost every property. But if a buyer is not prepared for something like that, then that laundry list of little things can sometimes feel a little bit overwhelming. So those discussions are super important in the beginning.
I think it's important with anything, with a listing, with anything dealing with clients. If you can foreshadow a little bit, plant a little seed that this may come up later on, then it's not a surprise. They're somewhat prepared for it, and it makes discussing the issue a lot easier.
Yeah.
And accepting the issue a lot easier. And funny enough, this is actually a subject to sale, this purchase as well. So
so another buy sell.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's shoot, I think Ron's rubbing off on me. I just lost my thought.
I get it all the time too. You get 15 thoughts all of a sudden and oops.
Oh, you know what it was? You were talking strata and depreciation reports. They cause a lot of fear in people. The depreciation reports, they're summaries, a snapshot, a condition of health of the strata corporation as a whole, with a picture of where you are, a picture of where you will be. And then there's always a best case scenario. Like, this is what you need to do to make sure all of these, common property issues and items of repair and maintenance are covered over the long term. You're right. I've managed a number of strata corporations in the past, and not one of them has ever been anywhere near close to 100% funded. It's up to the owners to decide what that funding looks like and what sort of risk they're willing to take on. And you have to be realistic when you're looking at those. I know the engineer says that in 30 years, I'm going to have to replace the driveway. Am I really? Maybe not, right? It's one of those things, you may not have to, replace stucco. You may not have to do a lot of these things, but the depreciation report is a checklist of all the things that you should be looking at. Whether you actually, do everything that it tells you or suggests you do, probably not. Some of the best run strata corporations that I've seen are in that 30 to 35% funding range, and they operate very healthy. They have a reasonable amount in the contingency and an active council that, is aware of what needs to be done. And they have a proactive plan down the road to maintain and capitalize on the key issues. But the depreciation reward, as I said, it does scare a lot of people because they'll get it and they'll think, you know, they'll read the best case scenario and they're just going to assume that, you know, in 2 years, because it says we need to do a $1 million cash call, that they're going to have to pay $1 million in the future, or their share of $1 million. And so, you know, we talked about the walkthrough, you know, when prior to an inspection, when dealing with stratas, you know, and you're ordering the strata documentation, you know, being able to explain, you know, what a reasonable or a normal sort of contingency reserve balance would be, and really what the expectations are around the depreciation report. Generally, it's a snapshot with some recommendations and a model that shows where you are today and where you are in the future with that particular model. So you know, we get a lot of calls and there's a lot of discussion around fear and people wanting to, you know, back away. But also in the end, you know, there's a fear a little bit around stratas and, you know, the potential for special levies. But, you know, even if you're in a single family detached or a non-strata property, that potential always exists. You know, it doesn't matter if it's your single family home or you're part of a strata. You know, a strata cash call to, you know, replace the shingles on a roof is no different than you having to replace the roof on your own home. It just won't be something that comes through a strata council. It's going to be something that you're going to manage and navigate through independently. So the structure, the understanding, and just sort of the governance around it all is really important for people to understand. And ultimately, the strata makes decisions based on what the owners decide.
Well, you're 100% right. I mean, if you own a house or a duplex or anything else, you should be putting money away into your house fund, same as you would with a strata anyway, for issues. And I think the important thing for people to understand is that the depreciation report is kind of a worst case scenario on the expected life of whatever. Chances are, with proper maintenance and taking care of things and you know, not letting things go to the point where they need to be replaced, just repaired and maintained, they're going to last a lot longer than that depreciation report states. And you know, and that will make the levy smaller, a couple more years of savings. I have a whole spiel I go through with my clients with stratas, explaining that a strata is basically a business, and it's important to understand how it's being run, aside from the rules and bylaws, but how financially it's being run. You know, a lot of people ask, well, what's in the contingency reserve fund? I said, well, that doesn't really matter. That's half the story. It's how that correlates with the depreciation report. You know, you have one strata that's got $2,000 in the contingency reserve. The other one's got $2 million. Well, the one with 2,000 just did the whole building envelope and has money left over. The one with 2 million is going to have to do the envelope next year, and they need 3 million, so there's going to be a big levy. So,
and one of the benefits to a strata is, you know, they take care of padding that repairs and maintenance budget for you. You know, as homeowners, you know, not everybody, arguably, not everybody is as diligent as they should be as tucking money away for these repairs and maintenance items. But, you know, the benefit of a strata corporation is they look after that for you. So, Ron, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's bang on, Ryan, and it's so key to convey and have people understand that the depreciation board is a conservative worst case scenario of the estimated replacement future of every system of the building, many of which may not ever need to be replaced. And the three financial models aren't like a best case scenario, worst case scenario. They're just ways to fund that worst case scenario.
100%.
They give you a best and worst case option, and the option is yours to decide where you want to land and how much you want to contribute.
Sorry, I don't see it as a best and worst. They're just giving you three different options on how to fund one worst case scenario.
Gotcha.
Yeah. High strata fees, high levy, or somewhere in between.
And
but one of the biggest things that comes up is you know, balconies or windows where they say on this date we're going to have to replace them all and it's going to cost this much.
Yeah.
Well, a well-run strata is going to replace what needs replacing and let the rest live out the rest of their life and replace as needed, stretching that out, lowering the levies. And, those are important things to explain to people, I think, as well.
Yeah. And in the end, the owners are always responsible, and they're the ones that approve the budgets going forward every year. So, everybody has a say. It's not like you don't have the ability to contribute or be part of that conversation. Yeah. Okay. Anybody, anything further? I'm gonna wrap it up here at 10. I've got to run up and do some setup work for my son's grad ceremonies and parade and stuff tomorrow. But if there's nothing further, we'll wrap this up and look forward to seeing you guys on the next one.
Yep. I just need to talk to you for like 5 seconds after
Sure.
everyone's
Okay.
done. So
We'll let everybody go and then we'll hang out.
Bye, guys.
go away.
Thanks,
Brad.
everyone.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.